I wonder how many people have found themselves in those very situations where you step back and you have that moment of, how did we just get here?
Yeah.
This is so outside of my norm of how I want to act. And now what do I do? And that's what we're going to talk about today is when your outside voice says what your inner voice wanted to say, but it's probably not the best voice to share. Welcome, my friends, to the Happiness Breakthrough, where resilience, mindset, and excellence converge. Join us, Dr. Mark and Becky Leonard, high school sweethearts turned entrepreneurs, as we share powerful stories and practical tips to elevate your life.
From overcoming life's toughest trials to mastering mindset and relationships, every episode is a journey towards your happiest, most fulfilled self. Tune in and transform your life with real, actionable wisdom.
Driving down the road, I was cut off.
Again,
Okay, so this happens a lot.
what does that say about your driving?
I'm slow,
Of course, darling.
of course. And I was at Costco the other day getting groceries. I had the most amazing experience. I'm going along. I'm just trying to get chicken and toilet paper, right? It's
The two staples.
the two staples that you have to get at Costco. And as I'm going, I don't know what happened, but it was a crazy, crazy evening there. And when I went up to the checkout stand, I'm walking up and I saw this mom and daughter. When I say mom and daughter, the daughter was probably 30-ish. I only assume that's the relation.
Okay, okay.
And I'm walking up to check out and they totally cut me off.
Oh,
And then what do? They look down, right?
mm, nope,
The first thing
nope.
they do is they grab their phone, like, oh, I've got something important to do here.
Right,
So they start looking at their phone, ignoring me.
right. I've been a jerk and I know it, so I'm just going to pretend like I didn't do what I just did.
Amen. Okay, so we have traffic being cut off. We have being cut off at Costco. How about another one? Oh, just the other day, our whole POS system, point of sale system, went down at our store. And we could not accept cash. We could not accept credit cards. We couldn't even ring up the order.
The drawer would not even open. What is that?
I don't know. It was crazy. So what we had to do for a period of time was we were just giving out free product until we could get a backup payment
It was terrible.
up and going. It was terrible, but it was really interesting to me. Somebody came in and I was letting them know I'm working on this. I'm trying to get it. We do have a backup payment system. We're going to do this. And she said, okay, but I need my points. And I was like, well, I'm so sorry. Our system is down. We have no way. And she started getting really, really upset with me. I need my points because I want my free product. And inside, I
Well,
found myself boiling.
well, and along with that, you'd already offered her free coupons,
Yes.
but the free coupons weren't enough. She also wanted her points for more free product on top of the free product that you'd already given her.
And my very first reaction inside was, how dare they? How rude. And I really wanted to let my outside voice express my inner voice.
Yeah, excuse me? Who do you think you are?
Do you ever find yourselves in those situations of life where you open up your mouth and you're like, my outside voice just said that, and you can't take it back?
Yeah, no, actually, I find that it's my facial features that I can't take back. I'm like an anti, what's the word I'm looking for? Like confrontational person. I kind of avoid it at all costs to my detriment. However, I'm not very good at hiding my what my face is saying about a situation. So
This is why we do not play poker.
that's true. Any game where I've got to lie, forget about it. Forget
There was a dice game that we used to play. I
Lo-
want to say,
Lodudo.
yes,
Yeah.
Loduno. And it was all about lying about the number of dice
Yeah.
and the numbers. She could not play that
No.
at
No.
all.
No. It was terrible. But I do get it because I actually experienced something like that. I had a situation with a business relationship with a few different people, and over the course of time, something had happened that degraded this relationship. I don't really know what, but then things started to get awkward and things would be said, and I started feeling like I was being attacked. And it kind of all came to a head one day. And I decided to write a letter, to write an email. And I looped the people in on this and I said what I needed to say. And most of the letter was pretty right on point with like, hey, these are the things that we agreed to and whatever. But I happened to have started that email a little bit in your face, which is not like me, you guys. It really isn't. Like I said, I'm non-confrontational, but I did it. I kind of went for the guttural at first. And then they responded back with an attack, and I took offense. And then I attacked back, and then they attacked back even worse. And it just kind of escalated. And it got to the point where I was like, how did this happen? Like, this isn't even who I am. I'm not the kind of person that goes like for the guttural for people. I'm
I'm laughing because people would believe that I might do something like this. And yet, who didn't say a word in the email chain? This guy.
right, except I did say we on everything.
I was guilty by
You
association.
totally were.
I love that.
Love you, babe.
Oh, I'm so glad that we twain can be one and help each other out.
But it actually it did. It got to the point where I felt like I was no longer living true to my values, to the things that I hold near and dear to who I am as a person. And I had to do some serious soul searching. So that last email came in and I took probably a week of breathing. And in that week, I started thinking, how do I want this to end up? How do I want to represent myself and how do I want this to change because I'm not happy with the way things are going. And I had to do some serious, what do they call that when you have to like eat crow? I think that's the term, right?
You had egg on your face. You were eating crow.
100%. Yeah. Any other good terms for that?
Oh, no.
You
No,
want
dear.
to shoot at me?
No, no, definitely not. But I wonder how many people have found themselves in those very situations where you step back and you have that moment of, how did we just get here?
Yeah.
This is so outside of my norm of how I want to act. And now what do I do? And that's what we're going to talk about today is when your outside voice says what your inner voice wanted to say, but it's probably not the best voice to share.
Is that the, did my outside voice just say that?
Right after your face did.
All right. So it happens. It happens to the best of us, even to those anti confrontational people. It happens to the best of us. None of us are perfect, but there are some strategies for how to reassess and get yourself back on track.
Yeah. And the very first one is self awareness. It's eventually you get to some point where you say to yourself, whoa, that was never what I meant, or that is not what I said, but it is what was understood.
Right. Unintended consequences, right?
Yes. And
Yeah.
so that very first step is recognizing that it is outside of what you expected, wanted, desired. And there's evidence of that, right? There's evidence of that in conversations and in relationships
Mm.
when you begin to step back and you say, huh, there's something, there's a distance in the relationship now, or there is a feeling of dread or anxiety, if you begin to say to yourself, oh, I just heard my text on my phone, I don't want to look at it in case it's that person,
Right.
those are telltale signs that something could have gone awry.
I totally found myself doing that. Like I didn't want to look at the email that was going to come in next, and then I read it anyway, and then I was like mad all over again and totally did that.
All
Yeah.
right, so
So I was not in congruence with myself.
great word, congruence with the very best of you. So the first is understanding that something is incongruent, where it is just not where you expected or wanted it to be. I am reminded of a really great scripture in Philippians. Paul is writing to them, and he talks about it's in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. And he talks about if there's anything honest, lovely, good rapport, praiseworthy, just, pure. He suggests that we should think on those things. And I believe that lesson that Paul was teaching us is we should be looking at those values that really drive how we operate in the world. Whenever you feel like you're operating off or not as you had anticipated or expected, often it's because you have stepped away from your values.
Truth. When you guys find that to be true, Mark and I've thought a lot about that, about how it's really interesting to us that businesses always have values that they lead out with, right? And it's something that in our franchise that was really important to us is we were picking the one that we most connected with. We were really looking at what values do you stand for? And then when we opened our doors and we taught our squad what to do and how to run that business, it was all led by those same values. These are the core values that we stand by, and all behaviors will be based on those values that we espouse, right? So your values dictate your behavior, and the results that you get are based on those behaviors that you have, right? So
Yes.
so then when I went away from my values and went in reacting to the situation, the results that I got were not congruent with those values, right?
Okay. You just landed upon a really, really important formula is that when your results are not what you expected, it's most often because your behaviors are not in alignment with your values. I was just talking with another business owner earlier today, and we were talking about how crazy it is that when I am working with companies and CEOs and founders of small businesses, that I'm not looking at their bottom line, I'm not looking at their sales process, I'm looking at the individual. And if their results are not in alignment with what they were hoping or expecting, it's often because they never took the time to define their personal values, right? We went to lunch and they had this wonderful wheel of 9 or 10 different values
Yes.
in this circle. One of
Yes.
my clients that I was coaching this week talked about doing the very same thing. So I turned it around on my client. I said, just curious, what are your values?
Hmm.
And it was a little bit of a step back for a moment. And she goes, well, those are my values. And then she said, actually, not all the time.
Hmm.
And she admitted that her values are different based on who she's with.
I think people find that to be true. I would say that's maybe something that people have a lot of problems with in going to church, right? And you go to church and you see these people, and we're in Sunday school and we're having a lesson and we're talking about all these things are near and dear to our heart, and we talk about the values that we stand for as we deal with these situations. And then you see them out in the community and they are the antithesis of the things they talked about on Sunday. And all of a sudden you're like, who are you?
Right?
right? And I love that you even said like, um, I don't know, a few podcast episodes ago, you were talking about how you had this realization one day when you came home. Do you remember that from work?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, do I remember that? Do I remember that? Remember the whole facial thing, Becky? This was one of those moments where I might have been on the receiving end of some facial exercises.
What? I'm innocent.
Absolutely innocent. And it was because we were sitting down at dinner, and it was a long day for me. It was a long day for you. And you finally piped up and you said, "You have your work voice on."
Yeah.
And I realized in that moment, as the whole table was quiet with our 6 kids, that I was a very different person at work and home and church. And that incongruence created a lot of conflict because now I was having to change constantly who I was. I was not operating from a core set of values that I had defined that didn't matter who I was with, what I was doing, that I was operating from those values. And so, one tool that you could utilize is spend some time writing down a whole bunch of words. And I actually take a deep dive into this in one of the courses that we have called Excellence, and taking some time looking at the values that you want to live from.
Right. That like, and I love when restaurants have, 20 words and then, subcategories for all those words. But really, it should come down to just a few, right? In Mark's coaching, he really walks his clients through finding three words that represent the very best of you. And of course, there's so many things that make up those 3 words, but those 3 words should really connect with you and drive your behaviors, right?
Absolutely, because now, whenever you go into a room, whenever you get ready to have a meeting, whenever you're going to have a difficult conversation, you could remind yourself of those values. This is how I want to act, react, how I want to show up in the world.
So then sometimes what happens though is that it's not your fault. You've been operating from the place that you always operate from, and somebody else has their moral agency to act differently. And sometimes that means that, man, you're screwed over. And I think that the biggest challenge, honestly, is still coming from those same values when you have been so greatly affected by something that's not even in your control. Nothing that you did, nothing that you said has caused this thing, right? How do you still show up as your very best?
Many years ago, I was at work and I was having a difficult relationship with someone that I was supposed to work very closely with. Come to find out, he had a file on me of every conversation we ever had.
Oh my gosh.
And he kept extensive notes. And he was very upset if one thing led to another and we did not deliver based on our conversation. Now, I was leading a team and we had $1 million projects that we were running. But in that moment, if for one reason or another, I did not hit the deadline that he was expecting, he was coming after me with proof from each of those meetings. I found myself getting really angry with him.
Yeah, that's hard.
And I had to then step back. And one, I had to have mercy.
Yeah.
I had to have mercy for him, but I had to have mercy for me too, recognizing that I'm doing my best. Now, I would have to have a self reflection conversation. So, again, right? So, we have self awareness. Number one, define our values. Number two, and number three would be show mercy for ourselves and show mercy for other people. I had to, in that self reflection process, ask myself, did I do my very best? And if not, because I am human, and if I said something erroneously, I had to own up to it, but I also had to make sure I didn't dwell upon the mistake.
Oh, I struggle with that. It's probably like a toxic trait. I don't know. Maybe it's a psychological toxic trait. I don't know. But I will spend days thinking about how I might have done something that offended somebody or that like came across wrong, and I have a hard time forgiving myself.
So, spending time and understanding what that mercy for yourself looks like in the moment, you made the decision that you made at the time based on the information that you had, right? Viktor Frankl, you made the decision that you made at the time based on the information that you had. Otherwise, you would have made a different decision.
True.
However, if you found yourself making a decision based on emotion, based on retaliation, because they had a file on you, or they said something mean, or they were derogatory, or the things that tend to happen in our workplaces, in traffic, right? I mean, the person that cut me off
Costco.
was waving. I think they only had a few fingers. They were waving. But the reality is, we come and we have these moments where we realize we have a weakness. And instead of beating ourselves up, start looking to say, okay, what did I do? If I could do it over again, how would I do it next time?
And then for me, the next step was how can I make it better? How can I make amends? How can I show up as my true self? How can I realign with my own values?
And I think that takes, again, that self reflection. Something I love to do is in my morning journal. There's a question in my morning journal that I use, and I will give a link out to what I use. It's called Growth Day. And I love this journal. There is a digital version of it. You could also utilize it in paper base. I've used both, but there is a question in there that is, who needs me to be on my A game today? So when I am having a difficult time and I am beating myself up, I'm now taking myself and saying, wait a second, would the person that I'm fighting for, would the person that I'm trying to do my best for, would the person that I love the very most or I'm trying to serve, would they be beating me up? And if not, that self thought is not self serving.
I love how in the scriptures, God is pretty clear about how we're supposed to have godly sorrow, but not guilt. Guilt is not from God, but godly sorrow, like I feel bad about this, but I'm going to show myself mercy and forgiveness, and I'm going to show the other person mercy and forgiveness, and then I'm going to make it right. That's godly sorrow and working through it.
Absolutely, because our weaknesses can then become our strengths.
Yeah.
It's not about being perfect in everything that we do, although we strive for that. But if we get it stuck in a perfection cycle, we're no longer having mercy for ourselves. We're no longer utilizing, so I'll use what you were saying, that gift from God that says, hey, I've already paid for all this. So then why do you keep dredging it up? It doesn't mean that that's a free pass to go do it again, but it is a free pass to say, what can I do next time?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important place to be, because if we're going to be living from our value standpoint, that our decisions are based on values, and when we find ourselves off of that path, we need to quickly figure out how we could get back. And one of those is forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we made.
Then the final thing is having the hard conversations. So I had to, a week later, after I'd taken some time to breathe, then it was an email. Of course, it was still an email because that's how this whole thing had gone down. But I still had to go back to the other party and do my best to make it right based on my values and invite a conversation where we could fix what's broken. And that was a hard place to be. Sometimes when you feel justified in your behaviors, even though they didn't match with your values, then you really have to do some soul searching about connecting with God and connecting with what His purpose is and what you're trying to become in order to swallow your pride and get back to that place that aligns with your values.
One of the strategies I really love to use in this preparing for that conversation is asking ourselves a series of a couple questions. Number one, just simply, how would I like this to end? What is my end game? What will success look like in this conversation? Now, we have to be careful not to place how they will react as a part of success. It's about how will we change how we show up to the conversation.
Right, because you can't control, they may never forgive me. I can't control that. I can only control how I act going forward.
And part of that preparation is defining how will you act? How will you react? How will you plan? What thoughts do you want to have in relation
Mm.
to this relationship? How do you want it to end? Do you want it to still go forward, or do you want there to be a finality to the relationship? Sometimes that is the right answer. However, if you are ending a relationship based on bad feelings and hurt and anger and frustration, you're not ending a relationship, you're running away
Right.
from the problem. And then it just will dwell and eat you up inside. So, learning to prepare for that conversation
Yeah.
is really vital. So, we have an experience with this that was actually hit close to home. Being the parents of adult children can be a different skill set than being a parent to toddlers and being a parent to teenagers.
Yeah.
And by the way, there is no handbook out there that says, oh, congratulations, I hereby anoint you with this all things on how to parent through every stage and every crisis of life.
Yeah.
So, figuring out how to parent an adult child is a very different relationship. And we had an experience where it was based on unmet expectations.
Isn't there something out there that says that, that I think we've talked about that before, that hurt comes from unmet expectations?
Yes.
I think I talk about that with our adult children all the time, actually, in their own marriages.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And some of them are just really easy things like, okay, this year you're coming to our house for Christmas. Next year you're going to my daughter-in-law's parents' house for Christmas, or whatever that looks like, right? But we had one of those very unmet expectation conversations that we allowed to escalate. And when I say allow, it went from a conversation to an all out food fight within mere seconds. And it escalated so quickly
Yeah.
that when we got off the phone, we were all wrecked.
Wrecked. It was the worst. It was the worst emotional experience we've been through in a long time.
It really was the very, very long 7 days until we had opportunity to have a conversation with that child again. And we had to prepare ourselves for what did we want to say?
Mhm.
How did we want to apologize for our own part? And how are we going to express our point of view while still listening and understanding their point of view?
Allowing space for them to say whatever they needed to say and having it be their truth, and not being offended by their truth.
Absolutely. And by the way, it took time, but that relationship is mended now. But there was a moment there where we thought, at least I did for a moment, I had a lot of sorrow. Where I thought that relationship with our child could be over. And I was so scared. And I was so hurt. And I was so sad for the things that I said. that it still hurts. But we were able to prepare for the conversation and be able to express love. We were able to express kindness. We were able to give space for understanding. We were able to be able to share our point of view
Right.
in a kind manner, right?
And then ask them for what their expectations were.
And since that time, it's been better.
It has been better.
It has been better and it continues to get better. And yet, this is something that maybe you've dealt with, but preparing for the conversation is a really vital aspect to that.
Mhm.
Allowing yourself, I actually love that part of my coaching is I do a deep dive on this with my one-on-one clients and walk them through how to have that conversation. Now, here's what's great. As the expert, I admitted I screwed up. So I had to have mercy on myself again.
Right.
I had to go back to my values. I had to understand that I had made a mistake, become self-aware before I could go and have that conversation. But I love walking my clients through on that. And it is something special I do with my deep dive
Mhm.
and my one-on-one clientele is really spending time on that. And it's always an amazing change. I'll just share this real quick story. I was working with a CEO once and he was having some difficulty with someone on his executive team that he had hired. And I just one day in my coaching, I was like, I guess if you just continue to ignore it, it'll probably just disappear like all those toys when you were a kid when you swept them under your bed. He goes, well, that never worked. I said, exactly, but you're still acting that way now. Maybe there's a different way you could handle this. And so we walked through how to have that really deep conversation and set those expectations. And I'll tell you what, the coolest thing happened. His business transformed because that relationship was repaired.
Hmm.
His whole trajectory absolutely changed because he was able to prepare for the conversation. It's just a marvelous thing to be a part of and to watch and to know that I was just a little bitty piece in changing someone's life and actually end up changing multiple lives through that.
I think that there's hope for a lot of different relationships. I think that for the most part, I mean, I don't know every situation, but I think a lot of things are fixable when you prepare for that conversation and when you give yourself mercy and when you extend forgiveness. And even we're going back to my three things. Assuming innocence because you don't know their side of the story and they don't know your side of the story. And almost always there is some truth in the middle. And I think that a lot of miscommunication happens from you not understanding their space and them not understanding your space and then not giving yourselves the time to listen to each other and to work it out. Sometimes it can be worked out quickly. Sometimes it's going to take some healing before that happens. But I think that as you come from a place of your own personal values and really leaning into what the atonement of Jesus Christ means in your life personally and in the people that you associate with, it can happen. Healing can happen.
I love that great reminder. Allow the great healer back into your life. Allow him to help guide how you will have those conversations. If you need help with that, if that is something that you are currently struggling with, or if you're not sure how to grow your relationship with your spouse, or you're not sure how to really figure out which direction you're going to go in your life, reach out to us. We would love to have some of these conversations and to see what we can do to help you really get back to that path of who you're destined to be. The world needs you.
And we've got, like Mark said earlier, an incredible course that really deep dives into your own values and how you apply that in your life. If you would like some further help with that, make sure that you go to
Yes.
thehappinessbreakthrough.com and take it over from here, babe.
Definitely. Go find us on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, go follow us and send us a message. If you would like to hear more about the excellence course that we have coming up, we will respond personally to you. We definitely want to answer any questions that you have, and please know that we do have some things that can definitely help you out. But we hope that today what you got was some great value about becoming self-aware, about understanding, and recognizing when things go off the rails, how you could then come from a standpoint of your values and start thinking from value thinking as opposed to emotional thinking. And then to have mercy on yourself and with others. And they give you a couple tools that will help you prepare for the conversation. Because if you have a crucial conversation, or if you have a conversation that needs to happen, the worst thing you can do is just be reactionary.
Or avoid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you are finding yourself needing some help in those, reach out to us on social media. We would love to help answer any questions that you may have. In the meantime, my friends, we cannot wait to see you again as you are on your path to your happiness breakthrough.